I mean,
Okay. Well, I want you to be comfortable. And I know that I just sprung that on you, I guess. I just
it's all
sprung
good.
this all on you, really.
It's all good.
Okay, good, good. Well, I'm just so excited and grateful you're here, Riki, because you're a trans icon, really. And I mean,
I think of myself more as an avatar, but I could be an icon in a good. Or maybe I'm actually more like a trans emoticon.
a little Riki emoji, that'd be awesome. But
Charged for that.
you have done everything that has been important. You created Gender Pack. You were in the Transsexual Menace. You've been in Time Magazine. You've written a number of influential books that are really amazing, and it's totally my privilege to be able to talk to you.
Yeah, influential means they were not selling well.
Right at the I words.
Yes.
Yes, influential. Yeah, so I don't know, is it okay if we talk about trans stuff as well as sugar stuff?
We can talk about anything you want.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so you and I connected because of one of your project that you're working on now. I don't know if you want to talk about that at all, but
Yeah, we can talk
yeah.
about that if you want. I am a major food addict and have been all my life. And I was actually asked to write something. I wasn't asked to write something. OA, Overeaters Anonymous, actually circulated a flyer asking for proposals or for chapters to be submitted, stories to be submitted for chapters in a new book that they're putting out. They're trying to update their literature. And of course, the literature is overwhelmingly, cisgender, white, male, et cetera. And they specifically asked for things like people of color, indigenous people, and transgender people. And I thought, And then someone forwarded to me and said, you want to consider doing something. And I wrote and rewrote the same piece about 24 times.
The draft of which I read and it was gorgeous.
Thank you. I mean, it literally, if I say 24, it really was 24 times because they had a severe word count around 800. I never quite got it down that far. But it struck me in writing that how little there was on trans people in addiction, although I suspect the base rates among transgender people for addictive behaviors and or substance abuse are probably epidemic, may even be a silent epidemic among us. And so I thought, there needs to be a book about this, but there isn't really enough research. Maybe I'll do an interview book. And that's why I approached you about being interviewed. In fact, you were my first interview. So I was a virgin when I met you. I can actually say that. Yes, audience, I was a virgin when I met Sam Peterson. And I am not now. So you draw your own conclusions from that.
Yeah, don't speak too harshly about me.
Yeah, but anyway, so if there are people listening who would like to be interviewed, I pay a nice $50 honorarium. It's only an hour of your time, and you can be totally anonymous. But I think we need to start getting some focus on that and on issues like PTSD and, for that matter, sexual abuse, which I also suspect are epidemic in the trans community. And I haven't compiled any data on this, but I sent the original invitation in the interview to, I think, like a dozen people that I just happen to know, what the academics call a snowball sample. And out of the 12, I think 8 got back to me and said, yeah, I have an addiction. And these are almost all overwhelmingly white, highly educated, upper middle class individuals. And so I thought, oh my God, so this is just the tip of a much larger iceberg.
Right.
So you can get in touch with me through Sam or through my email, which is Wilchins, WILCHINS @gmail. Cool. Thanks for letting me plug the book, Sam.
Yeah, I mean, we connected because of this project, which I think it's timely. It's incredibly important, this kind of work. And because we have this commonality of being trans and being addicted to sugar. And so I was really eager to talk to you about that. I know my addiction very much intersects with my gender experience, let's call it.
We hate to use the D word, don't we? Dysphoria.
Yes. Yeah. Right. But yeah, the dysphoria, whatever's happening for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. When did that emerge for you? Like, when did you have an origin story
For which part?
for sugar?
Oh, my daughter's anorexic, and I was trying to understand it. And a friend of hers is also anorexic. Said, "You understand, this is something she is, not something she has." And I feel that way about myself too. I think that the gender stuff and my abusive little family probably amped it up and put it on steroids. But I believe I was born with an allergy to sugar, or as they say in 12-step programs, an obsession of the mind and an allergy of the body.
Mm.
So I think I've always been, my body does not metabolize sugar and white flour, which turns to sugar in your mouth. My body does not metabolize sugar and white flour in normal ways. I'm agog that other people can eat little bits of it and put it down. I have no idea how they do that.
Yeah.
I mean, I can do it, but it just sits there and it talks to me the entire time. So
yeah, well, I don't know what that's like either. And in fact, I don't know if you suffer from this,
bizarre.
but if I get overstuffed, I actually want to eat more. Like, my brain does this weird thing where
Yes.
yeah.
You want more. Yep.
Yeah.
There's a certain point, and I also find that if I eat when I'm not really hungry, I will continue. I will search for a point at which I can stop, and I can't usually find it. Very difficult.
Yeah. I was telling.
I mean, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Tell you what. Yeah, I was saying for me, it's like a 3-layer cake. My overeating is a biological part, which is the sugar thing. I think that's biochemical. And then there's the emotional eating. And then I think there's like just the overeating from trauma. It's kind of like a dopamine thing. I need to calm down. My hyperactive, hypervigilant nervous system will not stop. And eating food actually, I can feel it. I get calmer. My blood pressure goes down. I can feel it. And so for me, it's like a 3-layer cake, and I have to work all 3 parts of it: the emotional part, the dopamine rush, and then the sugar addiction.
Yeah. And
luckily, it fits into a food analogy, so that's perfect.
Right, and it works. Sugar works, and flour. Let's be clear about it. Like, it does what it's meant to do. At least for me, like, it totally chills me out. It gives me high. Yeah, and I don't know about you, but for me, the layer of fat, I think too, has become protective, or there's something about that for me. I know when I get thin, I have a sense of being too vulnerable.
Yeah, I mean, that whole idea that fat is a feminist issue. I forget who the writer was. A famous book in I think the 80s.
Yes.
But this idea that women put on body fat because it separates them from the male gaze and it hides their bodies. And frankly, it's kind of armor. And I totally relate to that. I think that works for men and for women, that there's something about it. And when I get thin, or when I feel hungry, I feel more vulnerable, therefore more feminine, therefore more exposed. And I want to medicate that with food.
Oh, that's so interesting. When you get thinner, you feel more feminine.
And also just when I feel empty. I mean, I get that flat stomach thing. I just feel,
Oh, that's so interesting.
I feel less substantial. And when I feel full, I have that sense of, I can't explain it, but it definitely kind of puts a buffer between me and the world. And for that matter, between me and my body, I'm less aware of my body.
Yeah, I find that if I gain too much weight, I start to feel feminine. Like, I get curvy, I get hippie, I get thighs, and it just, it makes me crazy. Like, I cannot stand it. And I grapple with that because I have no issue generically with layers of fat. Like, I don't care, but it really makes my dysmorphia like crazy.
See, I go in the opposite direction. No surprise there. But when I when I pick up weight, I feel, I wouldn't say necessarily more masculine, but I feel more armored and protected and, distant from my body. Thinness was associated with femininity. I think that's in my mind someplace. So
Does
Yeah,
the sense
I
of
definitely
being,
look different in a dress when I'm thinner.
that makes sense. And is there a kind of a feminine vulnerability of being thin? Do-
Yeah, and to me, vulnerability and surrender equal abuse. So that just trips all my wires. So when I get thin, I feel better and I feel more feminine, but I also get completely hypervigilant and a little crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Yeah.
this kind of love-hate relationship. And so it's really easy to just get really full on something and then it goes away.
Mm-hmm. Right. And even though I know what the consequences are for me to get full, I know that it will trigger me for the next days, the next coming days. I will want sugar. I will want sugar. It also makes me gain weight, and which makes me crazy.
Yeah.
And I can't stop it.
Sugar is just under-recognized as a drug,
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
think.
it is absolutely a drug. Yeah.
And I think also, in general, happy people don't develop addictions. I'm not saying that, addictions aren't there to begin with. I think they are, but happy people usually don't develop addictions. And I think also that, base rates among the trans community for sexual abuse and or PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, are probably also epidemic. And for those of you only listening to the audio, Sam has raised his hand.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
um,
Yes.
yeah, I've only done 2 interviews so far, and both of them are PTSD, and both of them are have had sexual abuse. So,
Mm,
and if I include myself, that's 3 out of 3.
wow.
So
Yeah.
I think and again, all 3 people are, white, upper middle class, highly educated. So I
Yeah.
think we're beginning to see a trend here developing.
Right.
Um, I think we spent so much time deconstructing gender and reading Judith Butler on postmodernism that we have ignored some really important things going on in the community. And
Mm,
writing about cisgender people. I include myself. We write about cisgender people a lot. They certainly are the bane of my existence in many ways, even though my partner is cis, so there are exceptions. But yeah, cisgender prejudice is written about a lot, but I think at the expense of writing about actual trans people's lives. And
mm,
I think, I've written this before and I'm trying to write more about it, but, transgender people, I think, present the ideal profile for sexual predators. We are ashamed of ourselves, we're socially disconnected and or awkward, we're confused about our bodies, we're desperate for approval, we're often very emotionally transparent, and we're used to keeping secrets about our sexuality and our bodies and genitals. So it's kind of like a checklist for predation. If there's a shark swimming in the waters nearby, the thrashing of a genderqueer kid is almost bound to attract them.
mm,
I had one friend who, trans woman, who said when she was younger, she'd be sitting on the bus, taking the bus in rural Georgia to school or downtown or something to shop, and she said it just didn't matter. Some guy would get on the bus, and he would make a beeline to the seat next to her, and the next thing you know, his hand would be on her upper thigh.
oh, wow.
And this is rural Georgia. You didn't cry out or make a scene, and you certainly didn't tell your parents. And
Mm,
she would be ashamed that she somehow brought it on herself, but these guys somehow just knew that it was her. And she was like a jock, and she was as a
mm,
young boy, she was like a jock. It wasn't like she was effeminate. Not that that would excuse it, but I'm just saying that there's
yes.
predators know prey, and we
Yes.
are perfect, and we are
Yes.
disconnected from social networks and often from our parents who should be protecting us.
And there is this energetic phenomenon that predators catch on to. You're absolutely, that's been my experience too. And I'll tell you, when I was turning tricks and doing sex work, I could pick out in a line of men who would pay for sex. Like I just
Yeah,
had radar. So that is like that's a very real phenomenon. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I get that.
Yeah.
I get that. I also think that that feeds into the PTSD. I think that being raised a trans kid and having medical care withheld and being forced to live in the wrong gender, in a wrong gender, is child abuse by itself.
Yes.
I have a, you know, a gender normative pansexual daughter, self-defined. And I wonder, what would I would be in a jail cell somewhere if I forced her to dress in boy clothes, made her cut her hair short, forced her to walk around and act as a boy. Yeah. And I think also, and then you think about, well, suppose I started dosing her with testosterone. Well, that would be child abuse. Well, I was dosed with testosterone. It just was naturally occurring.
Oh
If I can use a disease metaphor, if I had, God forbid, a cancer growing, that would be naturally occurring. It doesn't mean it's good for you.
Right.
And we have this kind of, excuse the metaphor for those of you who have had cancer, but, we have this kind of growth happening that we can't turn off. And instead of getting the normal treatment for it, people let it ravage our bodies. And then we spend thousands of dollars and decades trying to reverse things that would have been easy to stop when we were 14 or 15 if they'd just given us a couple of years. And I actually believe that the wing nuts have got it exactly backwards. As you know, in Texas and other places, they're trying to define gender conforming medical care for kids as child abuse. They're half right. I think within the next 20 years, you're going to see some country, probably one of the Scandinavian countries, is going to define withholding care as child abuse.
Mm-hmm.
And there'll be penalties for it, just like if you're a Seventh-day Adventist or Christian Scientist, I think I meant, and you withhold care from a child that's physically ill or life-threatening, you can be sent to jail. I think you will be sent to jail or at least fined if you don't give gender-related medical care to your transgender kid. I know it seems impossible today, but it will eventually be considered child abuse.
I totally see that happening in Sweden.
Yep.
Without,
and then it'll spread and it'll finally get recognized. Massachusetts will do it, and just like gay marriage. But they're going to start to realize that forcing people to go through a normal childhood is just completely insane and is abusive and makes us crazy. And I think that plus the sexual abuse is part of the reason so many trans people have PTSD. PTSD symptoms include things like nightmares, insomnia, hypervigilance, flashbacks, inability to concentrate, and so forth. We know now that trauma is not just a psychological thing. Trauma makes chemical changes in the way your mind works and your body chemistry works. And
it
I think
changes
too
you
many
epigenetically.
Yeah.
If
you're exposed to trauma for very long, or even just a single deeply traumatic event, it makes these changes in your body chemistry. And from my own experience, that's absolutely true. And that's true of many trans people. Having gone through a trans childhood, your body chemistry changes, your neurochemistry changes in ways that make it very hard to get your brain set to anything resembling normal. I mean, even on this call, my shoulders just keep creeping up. It's just really hard for me to just relax, trust the world, and sit. I just can't. And I try to do it, but it just starts creeping in. I have this bunker mentality. I'm used to bombs going off, and I'm used to hiding in an emotional bunker because it's safe. And it's very hard not to armor myself. And it's just the way my neurothermostat has been set.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, aside from my food addiction, I definitely hold this weight as a protective device, without a doubt. I really feel that. Yeah. So you made an interesting, I don't know, this is sort of accidental, but you said this thing growing inside of you, which you metaphorically linked to cancer, this transgender experience. I'm assuming you're talking about that's growing inside you.
Well, exactly. Having hormones, watching chest hair sprout out, testicles drop, all that kind of shit. And the reverse for trans men, seeing breasts,
having a
getting
period,
all that stuff. All this horrible stuff happens that you could kind of tolerate when you were 6, 7, 8. But once you get into puberty, it becomes completely intolerable. And you have to go through it alone with no help. You can't talk to anybody about it. No one wants to help you with it.
It's
in fact, everybody compliments you on it.
Yes.
And it's horrible. And if you did this to any normal kid, we would recognize it as child abuse. But because it happens to trannies, no one cares about it much yet. But we're getting there. We're slowly getting there.
Right. No, that was totally my experience as a kid. I was just unpacking this with my EMDR therapist yesterday, and I also recognized I had thought that I didn't want to be a boy when I was a kid. Like that wasn't my narrative. But as I go back through EMDR, I'm like, I totally thought I was a boy until adolescence. I thought I was a boy until the breasts emerged and the pain began, you know. Yeah, it was horrific.
It's a horrific experience, and it would be horrific if we put cisgender kids through it.
And that
they
was
put us
about
in
the
jail for
time.
that.
Yes, you're absolutely right. You're correct. But it was the time for me that my weight started. I started having an issue with my weight. I started compulsively overeating around adolescence.
Well, it's a way to escape too, because it does feel good.
Mm-hmm.
And I can feel good. It doesn't be sugar. I can feel good just eating, peanut butter and celery. That'll do it for me.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't really matter what I'm eating, just the hand to mouth and reading something or watching TV while I'm doing it just gets this kind of, I just get out of myself. I'm in a different place and I'm calm and I'm away from my body.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm away from the world.
Yeah.
I hate when it ends. If I could just eat all day, I would have been happy. Well, maybe not happy, but at least narcotized.
Right. Yeah, there's something about things, like when you say peanut butter and celery, like I'm feeling that in my mouth and it's so compelling.
Oh, I triggered you. I'm so sorry.
No, it's fine. No, I'm just recognizing that feeling, that the joy of having something in your mouth,
For me, it's especially things that are crunchy, salty, fat, sweet, any of those things, but especially crunchy stuff. I carry a lot of tension in my jaw, and crunchy things are really, really helpful with that.
They say that the crunchy thing are people who are, it's related to anger, and that like ice cream is related to sadness. I don't know if that's
interesting.
True, yeah.
Yes, chocolate chip, the nobody loves me flavor.
That's awesome. Yeah, I always said at OA they should give out chocolate chips instead of poker chips, but that would be mean.
I like that. One of the fun things of going to AA meetings is you walk in trying to get rid of your addictions, and half the people are smoking, and then the other half are having coffee at the back.
Yeah,
and everyone's eating from a donuts and chocolate chip cookies. It's like, if I missed any addiction, oh yeah, there's no alcohol out.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah, the sugar levels are crazy. Like I think alcoholics, that is a thing that alcoholics don't often reckon with, which is that they need sugar. Like we crave sugar just from being an alcoholic.
Oh, I can't tell you how many people in my OA meetings anyway are double winners. They're in the food and the beverage program.
Food and beverage.
And nice. They say that the credits don't transfer. You can be totally abstinent and sober with alcohol and still have a shit time with food, because you don't have to drink in a sober way 3 or 4 times a day, but you got to eat in a sober way 3 or 4 times a day. Very tough.
It's a whole different ball game. I mean, I think I told you I was in OA for several years, did the steps and have a sponsor and all that with the OA, so I'm quite familiar with that program. When did you find 12-step help?
Well, I lived for a long time around the corner from the Gay Community Center in New York City. So there was a meeting for almost everything every other hour. And I could just walk into meetings. And I think that's kind of when I got sane. I was in my mid-40s, early 40s. And then I gave it all up, of course. They say an addict is someone who finds something that works and then does something else. And I think that's true in my case. We moved to DC to start Gender Pack. We had a child, I got married, bought a house, and I just, went back to white knuckling it on my own. And then my daughter had to go into residential treatment for a severe case of anorexia. And I just realized I was not going to be much help to her if I was still in my own food addiction. So I started going back to AA. And in the intervening 25 years, they had invented this wonderful thing called the internet. And all the meetings had gone online. So I could Zoom into meetings, which is great because I haven't owned a car in 3 decades. So
oh, wow.
I just live in one gay ghetto after another with 100% walkability, Greenwich Village, DuPont Circle in DC, South Beach in Miami. So you really don't need cars. And now with Uber, you really don't need a car.
Right, that's true. I lived off of DuPont. Sorry.
Yeah, no, great neighborhood.
Yeah.
But anyway, I can go to Zoom meetings. So I'm in a Zoom meeting like every day, pretty much. I just listen.
Mhm.
Very helpful. Game changer.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for trans people in particular, Zoom meetings are a real game changer because you can show up as yourself and you don't have to turn on the camera. You don't have to be seen or unseen or misseen or, it can be,
Yep,
yeah, it's really helpful. I really
it
enjoy it.
is. I'm finding people are also more respectful of pronouns. And at least my meetings in New York and LA, pretty much people, if you tell your
Mm.
pronouns, people do it, which is nice.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. They really do. My meeting that I go to is randomly very transy. We have at least 3 trans people, including myself, in this pretty small meeting, like in 20 people. It was total,
Wow,
yeah, coincidence. Yeah,
that's intense.
yeah. It's also great. We can really share
Yeah,
experience, strength, and hope.
I have not found many trans people in my meetings, unfortunately.
Oh yeah. I'm surprised by that because it just, to me, it aligns directly with dysmorphia or dysphoria.
Yeah, I just don't think people get it, and
The
I also think a lot of
recovery.
trans people I don't think it's something we talk about very much. Not that I see talked about in the community, like I said, and I also don't think that our healthcare providers ask for that. They're so busy focusing on other things. No one's asked, do you have an addiction?
Mhm.
And so I don't think healthcare providers are there yet. And frankly, I think, as trans people, we're a little gun shy about this stuff. And 12-step meetings are very like higher power stroke God oriented. The first ones that I went to were,
Yeah.
they were wonderful meetings. I mean, there's like one of the best known AA groups in the country. It's every day and it's hugely popular. And the first times I don't want to say anything bad about the meeting, but the first time I went, people were constantly texting me as a newcomer and saying, wanting phone contact. And then I started sharing that I was trans and suddenly no one reached out anymore. And I thought, well, maybe it was just a weird group. So I tried it again. And again, nobody. And it's like I didn't try it a third time. It may just have been bad luck or what those groups were that way, or just maybe nobody knew what to say. But my suspicion was that it was a little more of a religious group than a spiritual group. Let's just put it that way.
Yes.
And I talked to my shrink about it, and she said, "Find them their meeting." And I said, "Like where?" She said, "Well, go to New York or LA," and I did. And all the New York and LA meetings have been wonderful,
Oh, good.
accepting, and highly queer, which
Yes.
I appreciate. Not
Yes.
even the queer meetings; these are just regular meetings, but there are always queers in the meetings. So I
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also people of color, which I think helps. I think I should have known because I'm someone that I could see pretty much was white in those meetings. Whenever I get in white meetings, I'm probably in the wrong place.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was really lucky, Ricky. I transitioned in Alcoholics Anonymous, and if people had opinions about it, they went to their sponsor, and I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the
Yep.
patriarchal nature of AA or the 12-step programs is oppressive, dare I use that word. Um, Also,
Wait,
what
tell me again. I'm not sure what you mean there.
the God being he and the sort of religious
Wow.
framing of everything is oppressive to me.
Okay, I don't. Again, I don't want to disagree with you because you're the program host. I have not found that. I do think in some meetings it is, and like I feel like I said, I think some meetings are really Bible study meetings, and they're just
Mm,
using the AA, the OA format.
mhm.
And I think those first ones were probably an example of that. I was trying to say that nicely. Um, but I don't think that's necessarily the case. And the meetings that I go to, people use all kinds of genders
Yeah,
for their higher power, and a lot of people just, it's the universe, it's blah blah.
yeah,
I just had this discussion with a trans man I was interviewing, and he said the same thing. Oh, I can't stand the God stuff. It's like they don't say you have to believe in God. They say you have to believe in a power greater than yourself.
right,
That can
right,
be the
right.
group. As
Mhm.
far as I'm concerned, my addictions are powers greater than myself because I
Absolutely.
can't control them. And I said, he said, well, how do you deal with it? I said, well, the universe seems to be almost infinite and expanding. It was here for 13.8 billion years before I got here. It's going to be here probably for at least billions of years after I'm here due to entropy. It won't take over for at least several billion years. And I said, all I have to remember is that I only own about 6 feet of it. And that obviously, therefore, there is something bigger than me, and there is something in charge of the universe and it ain't me. Now we can
Mm,
argue over it's rather intelligent or it's merciful or it's
mm.
it's mean, but the fact is there is something here that is much bigger than my 6 feet, and whoever's in charge of the universe ain't me. And
Amen.
and that's all I need. And really, literally, that's all I need.
Yeah, yeah.
Someone said to me, they said, say prayers you don't believe to a God you don't believe in. And I thought I can do that. And I have talks with God or whatever that is, spirit, whatever. I don't really care what the word is.
I
God is
don't
so
have a
loaded.
problem with God. I think it's a
Yeah,
particular meeting that I go to. Because when I
I
go to
think it
queer
probably.
meetings, it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not a problem at all. Yeah. I
See,
think
I
it's
can't find queer meetings. What I find is meetings of white gay men. It always says
uh
queer, but it's always, and I don't know, maybe it's just the ones that I've tried.
oh
And there's
yeah.
like two lesbians and one terrified tranny who doesn't speak.
Yeah. I've been to
And
those
I don't know
too.
what that's about.
Yeah.
Those are the online ones. So maybe I'm in the wrong meetings. But I used to go to the gay community center. I
Hmm.
mean, I remember especially on Sunday morning, they used to have an open A meeting, and it was literally packed wall to wall. We'd have like 250 people in there.
I
And
remember those meetings.
yeah, it was like a communal event. And a lot of those people weren't even in addictive, but they just wanted the recovery and they wanted to hear the stories. So
Oh wow.
um, yeah, it's yeah. Anyway,
That's really something.
yeah, no, I just what you can find lots of reasons not to go to meetings. To me, my days, I am better with food, and I am a better person when other people remind me on a daily basis that when I'm in my own mind, I am behind enemy lines. My brain, in some kind of fundamental way, and my nervous system are broken, and I cannot repair them. All I can do is learn to deal with them, and for that, I need something outside myself. And maybe that higher power is just Riki before she got addicted and abused.
Hmm.
That would be fine. And maybe
Hmm.
that's my higher power. That's perfectly fine with me. But whatever's in here right now is gone. It's
Yeah, it gets
a lot of
dangerous.
people in the community have been saying that about me for years, but
Oh,
but whatever is in my head got me to where I am now. I'm not
mm,
a dumb person, but smarts do not help you in program. In fact, a lot of times they hold you
a
back. And
hindrance.
so
Yeah.
whatever I can do on my own, someone said my best thinking got me here. So my best thinking did not stop my food addiction.
Hmm. That's the
So
first thing I heard in a that I actually like really took in was my best thinking got me here because I thought it was so fucking smart. And that was like,
you are fucking smart. But the
yeah,
problem with smart people is you think you can think your way through everything. And
exactly.
it doesn't occur to us that our thinking is what's fucked. They call it in program, they call it stinking thinking, which is kind of
Hmm.
weird. It's a little punitive, but it's just, our
Hmm.
brains have been tormented by our bodies and by others, and they have been broken by sustained trauma,
Hmm.
and our bodies don't fit, and we have to learn how to fit back into them and reconnect with them. That
Hmm.
would break any young child's mind. That's why we develop addictive behaviors. I mean, addiction and mind to me are one thing. It is an obsession of the mind. It's not just the allergy of the body. Our minds are obsessive and they're crazy. And you have to be crazy to survive in a crazy situation.
Yeah.
In intolerable situations, people break down. And I don't know about you, but my transgender childhood was completely intolerable. To this day, it's tough to think about. I'm a little weepy here, but it's tough to think about being a kid. It's tough. And I for years I did, I did the first 4 words that every abuse survivor learns. It wasn't that bad.
Mm.
And I said that like a fucking prayer in church. Oh, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad. It wasn't as bad as so and so's. It wasn't as bad
Hmm.
as this person's. Oh, I wasn't in a war zone. Oh, at least I had two parents. Oh, they didn't hit me a lot. I love the word a lot in a sentence. Oh, I wasn't abused a lot. Oh, I wasn't sexually abused a lot. So I finally gotten over that part, but it's like, your mind breaks and it's like, okay to say that and to say, well, I
Mm.
need to get something outside of my mind. We don't have to call it God, but something outside of my own mental processes is needed for me to not be crazy on a daily basis. And
Hmm.
somehow being around other people reorients me when I hear other people doing it. Something goes, oh, right. All right. Even with
Right.
food, because I'm so smart after like a couple of weeks of abstinence, I start going, oh, I can do this. And I start taking control of it. When I
Mm-hmm.
take control of it is when I start going downhill.
Yeah. every time,
So
every time. And
what
it's,
can I say?
yeah, we're wired that way. We're just wired that way.
We
Um,
are, and that's why I think really, and I mentioned this to you, and I'm trying to push it out there gently to see if there's interest, but I really think there's a need for just a generic trans-oriented, NB-oriented 12-step group. And I keep toying with the idea of gender sobriety, which I'm sure has a different meaning to everyone, but I find it very useful.
what do you
And
mean
I
by,
need to be talking to, what do I mean? I'm like I said, I don't know what I
oh,
mean.
yeah, yeah.
I know for me, it's a cluster of related things that I need help with, and that it would really help to talk to other trans people. And they are addictive behaviors in the sense that it's not a substance abuse for me, but the constant depersonalization, which I have trouble controlling, just being in my body on a daily
Mm,
basis. They struggle
mhm,
every day when I go to bed,
mm,
every day, all day long. You know, the struggle to not idealize cisgender bodies
mm.
and to constantly be comparing or just judging my own. I have a highly manipulative and punitive um, attitude toward my own body. Excuse me one
Mhm.
second.
Sure.
We are being joined on today's call.
Who's that?
This is churro y chocolate.
Oh,
Churro
churro,
is because he looks like a little churro. Yeah, little churro. Yeah, little churro.
named after
Yes, yes.
food.
He looks like a little churro.
Yeah.
Plus, it gives me an excuse to practice rolling my R's. He also, as I said,
Churro.
he has my Jewish nose from about 2 noses ago. That's why I got it. He looks like me.
Oh,
Yes,
what
baby.
sweetie.
Yes.
What a
Yes,
lover.
we are a puppy. We wanted attention. Sorry. Um,
Aw.
it's such a have a very manipulative and punitive approach to my own body. I am constantly picking out what's wrong. You know, it would fuck me up to pick out something right about it. You know, and it's funny whenever I pick cisgender people to compare to, I only pick particular kinds of people. You
Ah.
know, I pick people who are always conventionally lovely and between the ages of, let's say, 15 and 25 or something. I never pick people who are like my own age or like 70-ish. And I just, it's like, it's just really warped way of doing it. What else? Um, I, um, I have a huge need to control things in my environment, my life. I am a
Mm,
control addict. And I know that also comes from trauma, which brings up
mhm,
my hypervigilance and catastrophizing and generally being a drama queen, also usually signs of trauma. So for me, and then I should be also the people pleasing, the constant worrying about how, especially if I'm wearing a dress. I mean, not like when I'm dressed like this, but if I go out in a dress or a skirt,
mhm,
constantly worrying about how cisgender people are reading me and what they're thinking, and
mm.
you know, kind of
God,
making everyone into, there you go, my higher power,
yeah.
someone to judge me. And so to me, being gender abstinent would be getting some perspective on those behaviors and trying to abstain from them on a daily
Mm,
basis. It may
wow.
be different for other people, but I'm very attracted to the idea, and I keep hoping there'll be critical mass of trans people to have like a weekly meeting at some point, or even a monthly meeting.
Mm, mhm. Well, let's put it out. We're putting it out there. I mean, why don't we just start one?
I'm just looking for people. Everyone that I interview for the book, I'm saying, oh, by the way, would you find this interesting?
Hmm.
So
I'm
you
down
said
for that.
yes. The second person said no. They're still wary of 12-step groups because of all the God stuff, but they would consider it.
Mm,
So, and I've called people I've actually recruited because I know them from my 12-step groups. I assume they would probably be in. So I'm
mhm,
just going to see. People may not remember this, especially if they were outside New York, but back in the early 90s, we started a 12-step group called, for reasons I forget, Survivors of Trans. Oh, I know what. Survivors of Transsexuality Anonymous. It was named after my abuse group, which was called Survivors of Incest Anonymous. It used to meet upstairs in the center.
mm.
And it started out with 3 terrified trannies in a basement room that nobody wanted, literally with chairs and desks stacked in the corner.
Oh God.
And toward the end, we had like 50, 60 people.
Wow.
And it was wonderful.
Riki.
And we had our own 12 steps and 12 traditions. And it was
Oh
just a
my
mod. It
gosh.
was basically, but it was just became this huge thing. I think it was more of a support group. I don't know if everybody was like working the steps and stuff. I doubt people
Yeah.
had sponsors. Maybe they did. What do I know?
Yeah.
But what was really fun was, after the meetings, we would go to the local coffee shop around the corner, which is right in the corner of 7th and 11th. It's a huge corner, very busy. And you know how if you're the only tranny walking through the coffee shop, people stare at you. And if there are 2 or 3 of you, people really stare. But with 50 or 60 trannies, almost all of them, tall transgender women, like they're walking through and taking over the freaking restaurant. Suddenly it's our space and we're staring at you.
Hell
And it was
yeah.
just a hoot. It
Hell
just
yeah.
became this incredibly empowering thing. I had never walked the streets of New York. Well, I had walked. No, actually, I hadn't walked. I had walked on the streets of New York. Anyway, but I had never walked the streets of New York with 30 or 40 trans people.
Wow.
It was just an amazing experience. We'd all sit there and
Wow.
talk for like hours.
Oh, nice.
And for a food addict, there were French fries everywhere. So I was a happy kid. Can I have one of yours? I'm like, I just a couple.
One.
Yeah, just a handful, just a couple. But no, it was tremendously empowering. And I missed the fellowship and I missed the recovery. I mean, we would talk to each other about really important stuff. So I don't know that gender abstinence is a definable term. I think it's probably different for everybody.
Mm-hmm. I think one thing that's really that I love about 12-step programs, and that's really hard for many people, is there's no small talk. We go deep and fast, and I love that because I have no time for small talk.
Yeah. Oh, I was just thinking part of the other parts of gender abstinence are coming to me. You get in this thing because you feel like everyone's staring all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And let's face it, a lot of times they are. That's reality based.
Yeah.
You start to feel like you're terminally unique and terminally important and terminally different.
Mm-hmm.
And it's taken me a long time to realize I am not particularly different or important. It feels like that because cisgender people make it that way.
Yes.
But there's nothing that spectacular or different or weird about being trans from anything else. It's just part of the human condition. And
I liken it to pregnancy.
Yeah.
It's just like
or being gay.
It's just as spectacular and ordinary as pregnancy.
Or being older. I'm starting to wrestle with, age discrimination.
Oh, wow.
Although that just makes you invisible.
Right.
But I think these are all part of the crazinesses we learn. And I think for people who are wrestling with surgery, there are additional problems. I know, especially for, trans men, there is the whole discourse around, diminishment of
penis, or
the whole, hating on trans male penises.
Oh,
the whole thing around
shame,
Frankendicks and all this stuff.
Oh God, that's heartbreaking.
It is, but I have to say it doesn't change. It does change significantly because of surgery is easier, blah, blah, blah. But, there was a long time. I'd had surgery. I had a really good surgical result by any measure, and I still hated my genitals until probably the last couple of years. So we're saying from what? I had surgery I was 28. I was 68. For 40 years, I hated my genitals and ignored them. It's really tough when you've had one set of genitals and they've been surgically created by some surgeon that you will probably never see again. And all of a sudden you have something else. It's disorienting. I mean, women who go through mastectomy surgery and reconstruction talk about it. It is disorienting to see your body like that. That's why guys freak out during combat when you see someone's limb lying there. It's disorienting and it's unsettling, and it makes your body feel like a crazy place to be. And of course, you're not going to be able to just, I'll just accept it and go out and have sex. And, who cares what people think? And, nobody that you're going to sleep with probably for the first 5 years has genitals quite like yours. So you're worried about that. And what will they think about it? And when do you tell them? And, a lover of mine, really, actually, we had a great time, would say, said your genitals need to come with their own manual.
Everybody's do.
They should, but especially with trans people. And it's like, because my nerves are routed in certain ways. Right. And it's just, it makes it hard. I read stories about women who'd been through female genital mutilation and how they kind of, reconstructed or reconnected. It is a kind of mutilation. It is a positive one. Someone's going to misquote me. I'm going to get hate mail somewhere. It is a positive one, but any kind of surgery where you cut into living flesh even for an appendectomy, is a kind of mutilation, even if it's a positive one and a needed one. And that is traumatic, and it takes you a long time to recover and rejoin with that.
I think that's probably true, particularly with genitalia. I have to say, for my top surgery, my first and lingering response has been nothing but joy. Like there was no trauma for me. There was no suffering. I was surprised by that, but I expected some grief and some loss, but I haven't had none of that. But I imagine genital surgery is completely different.
I don't know. I lie in bed sometimes thinking, God, what if I woke up one day and I said, oh my God, I made this horrible mistake? Well, I'd be completely screwed. And then it occurs to me that, for 40 some years, I have never woken up with that feeling ever. And in fact, I find it very painful when I dream about having my previous set of genitals. Not that there's anything wrong for those of you listening who do have those genitals, whether they're factory installed or previously owned. But yeah, it's just, it really is something you're born with. And it took me a long time to realize it actually was transgender. I still hate the term, whatever that term means. It's just such a weird, bizarre, small part of the population. Like, what are the odds? And it's like, even though I did the surgery and the hormones and everything, part of me kept saying, no, come on. And then I realized, okay, if you've lived for 40 years this way, then chances are this really is what you are. And you've never regretted it. This time around the wheel for this incarnation, this is what it is.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. No regrets. Never.
Yeah. Well, I regret that I didn't get treatment earlier.
Same. Yeah. I had
people say, oh, do you regret anything? It's like, yeah, I regret questions like yours. And I regret that my fucking parents didn't let me get treatment earlier.
I had just so successfully repressed and siloed my desire that I just didn't think it was possible. And then by the time I found it was possible, I was so full of transphobia and self-loathing that it still wasn't possible.
Yeah, I just talked with someone yesterday who said, I've been trying to get myself for years to go ahead and get top surgery. And still can't do it. They've been on hormones for years, but they're just so dissociated and depersonalized around their body that they just can't seem to get to it.
Wow. Yeah.
I felt really bad.
Yeah. That doesn't feel good. Yeah. I think what cis people don't understand. Please go on.
Sorry. No, I was just going to say, I think trans men also have to deal with the whole failed phallus trope, which is out there and which is enormously harmful and which is not even true. But yeah, and is being circulated by, not just, TERFs, but also by feminists who should know better and by some trans men themselves. And I think we need to get past that.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure what, failed phallus means. This idea we have to compare everything to cisgender people is just very destructive. By the way, I'm sorry, this is probably wrong for me to say. I apologize for my political correctness. But I was reading about the whole thing around penis size and failed phalluses and everything. And I was looking up the whole thing around, penis size being so important. And silverback gorillas, arguably the most masculine of the apes, have a penis that's just about the same size as a good metoidioplasty. And it doesn't seem to affect their sense of their, 2.5, somewhere in there, 2.5. And it doesn't seem to affect their masculinity at all. As far as I can tell, the average silverback pretty happy with their own manhood.
Right.
Or 8 foot, but only humans, have this feeling we've got to measure everything by penis size. And so we all have to go comparing ourselves to cisgender men. And cisgender men with smaller penises have to compare themselves to cisgender men with bigger penises. And it's like, there's a certain juvenile insanity to that I think needs to be looked at. Almost all the primates have extremely small penises, and it's completely acceptable. Bonobos, chimps, you name it. If anything, cisgender male penises are actually kind of grotesquely large.
Yeah, in the animal kingdom.
For people that are listening that do, but in terms of other primates, They
Yeah.
are.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
true.
the
Yeah.
whale's penis is actually extremely tiny in terms of its entire body length,
Is
you
that
know?
right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, in terms of its overall body size, but especially among primates, we are unique. And there are a bunch
Hmm.
of theories why, but
Hmm.
because, nature developed this, but it really has no connection to manhood or strength or size or anything. It's
Right.
relatively irrelevant. We've endowed it with all this stuff.
As it
And then
were.
we go convincing the trans men that they shouldn't get it because they won't be manly enough anyway. And
Hmm.
because it will be aesthetically not like it's supposed to be. So why do it? And
Hmm.
the aesthetics argument is kind of what trips me. Oh, that's not a gender abstinent thing. I need to make a note of that. But this comparing to cisgender bodies that I said as part of my gender abstinence is that all the kind
Mm.
of like all the standards I have in my mind for what's aesthetically okay
Hmm.
are all cisgender, and that just kills me.
Yeah,
That's
yeah. Let's change that paradigm.
well,
Yeah.
it's not even a paradigm. We do not have an aesthetic yet for looking at transgender bodies. We just
Okay.
don't. And
Hmm.
I don't know how we create one. I've done a lot of reading. I'm not saying that race is the same as gender. It's not. Please don't send me hate mail. But I think that there's a lot to be learned from from the Black is Beautiful movement and the
Hmm.
reframing of things like wider noses, darker skin, curlier hair, and so forth
Hmm.
as beautiful and
Hmm.
having their own inherent beauty and not needing to be compared to white people. And if there are people who
Hmm.
are listening and I got that wrong or said it in a insensitive way, I apologize. But every time I read about that, I like, how did they get to that place where they were able to make the turn? Because that wasn't true when I was born. When I was born in the 50s, the beauty standards were white. And then there was this huge
Hmm.
explosion during the 60s and the Black is Beautiful movement. And I keep going back to like, how do we do that? How do we get to trans as beautiful? How do we get to trans as beautiful? And I don't mean people like Janet Mock who are beautiful by any aesthetic. And I mean
Yeah.
people like me who are,
Yeah.
tall, rangy, short hair, no makeup wearing, feminine, feminine embodied individuals. How do we
Hmm.
get to an aesthetic that embraces me? How do we learn to look differently at trans bodies in ways that are not derivative
Yeah.
or prejudicial? And we haven't gotten there yet.
We
We
need to
haven't
see
gotten there.
more
I
trans
haven't gotten there
people.
yet. Sorry?
We need more visibility. I mean, there are a lot of artists who do work with trans bodies, and their work is extraordinarily beautiful. And I would like to see more of that.
The disabled community is also wrestling with similar issues.
Yes.
I think
Yeah.
Susan Stryker said something about those of us who have different kinds of bodies. I forget how she put it. It was much more elegant than that. But the disabled community is wrestling with similar kinds of aesthetic
Mm.
issues.
Hmm.
Anyone is different. The deaf community is wrestling with this around,
Hmm.
is hearing this better,
Right.
and what are the advantages of deafness, and can we redefine deafness not being a deficit? And
Right.
I think we need to look at the underlying models, but it's not that. So that way back to gender abstinence. I know I'm kind of free forming here, but that also is part of my gender abstinence is trying to rethink my body and my aesthetics and not be so busy to adopt cisgender aesthetics. And it's hard because we're surrounded by cisgender people. They're in every movie, they're in every book, they're in every TV show, they're in every ad. You're
Hmm.
surrounded by cisgender aesthetics, but I do think we need to have a transgender aesthetic, and we're not there yet.
Mm-mm. I
At least I'm
agree.
not. But that would
Right.
be part of gender abstinence for me, is working on that.
I love it. That's brilliant. Let's do it. Let's make it
I don't know
happen.
how. I don't know how. That's why I'm reading about the Black is Beautiful movement. Like, how did they do that? And I keep reading
Hmm.
what they call Crip Lit and trying to look at, disabled studies scholars. How are
Hmm.
they doing it? So I don't know how
Hmm.
to do this yet.
Yeah, I had one of my closest friends and roommates was a quadriplegic man named Keith, and
Wow.
we had a website called GIMP Unbound, which was,
Wow.
yeah,
That's intense.
and we did like photo series of him, and he actually made a boyfriend out of a guy that he met in from Germany who came over to the States to be with him through this series that we did. We did some erotica, and yeah, and it was amazing. And I got to witness some of that movement. It was extraordinary to me. I don't even know what to say
Wow.
about it except that it blew my mind, and I was so grateful to be a part of it.
I think we need to find a way to see things differently. We haven't done it yet. And as long as we don't, it's hard. It's hard. It's harder as you get older too. I mean, God love younger trannies and non-binary people, but when you're 16, every gender looks beautiful on you. You do. I don't know why
It's
that is, but
true.
they're basically, their bodies are still kind of smooth and androgynous. There are no
Yes.
wrinkles for most of them, and any gender looks gorgeous. When you're trying to do femme and you're kind of boy-bodied when you're 16, you can carry it off. When you're
Mm.
kind of boy-bodied and you're trying to carry off femme at 65, a lot tougher.
I think you're so beautiful. I know we're not talking about you, but I just think you're so beautiful.
Well, internally.
I don't know what you look like.
But no, I'm just saying, I think that we need to start looking at the aesthetic standards that we use and also the genital standards that we use. It's one thing to want, a certain set of genitals because you want them. It's another thing because the cis guys around you will make fun of you if you're peeing with the wrong genitals. And I think, anyway, it's a whole bunch of stuff to unpack there.
Yes.
I think there's more than enough you could pile into gender abstinence if you wanted. I'm not even sure that's the right term. It's just a term that I came up with. But
yeah, I don't know if that's the word, but it works for now, I guess. Well, Riki, thank you for jumping aboard and letting me talk
kicked
with
off the
you.
podcast. I knew this would
keep
happen.
talking.
I knew this would happen. No, it's okay. I remember saying at the beginning, I didn't think I could talk for a full 60 minutes with you. I have to end early.
Yeah, we could keep going. Yeah, but it is an hour long. So,
well, I know you have, as you said before we got on, you have literally thousands of listeners, and I hope that some of them, that was a plug for your podcast. I hope some of your thousands of listeners find at least some of this useful. And if not, you have my email, so you know where to direct your hate mail. You can also hate tweet me or hate chat me if you want.
What's your handle?
Number. I don't even know. I assume it's Riki Wilchins if I use it at all. I try to stay out of the Twitterverse, and I will not go into Facebook except to check for messages.
Oh, really? No.
Too toxic. I won't even go there.
Oh, wow.
I never understood. I'm like, what's the big deal? They just have a scroll, and it's like then they're unpacking all this stuff where the algorithm doesn't just collect things that you find interesting. The algorithm is designed to keep you looking, and it turns out what keeps you looking are things that are disturbing. So Twitter and TikTok and Instagram and Facebook are all showing my daughter things that are disturbing as possible. So if you want to see something interesting, the Wall Street Journal, it's behind a paywall, they actually did a graphic representation. They created like 20 different personalities, each of which had different interests. They were bots, of course. And all these different software platforms started out showing them stuff that was pretty close to their interests. And then eventually these arms kind of spiral up. You can see it in 3D and leads them into farther and farther stuff. So my daughter maybe looks up, weight. And the next thing you know, she's in weight loss, and then she's anorexia, and then she's in how to throw up. And then she's like, anorexia is good. And then she's in the how to starve to death group, because it's not about trying to just show you things that are in your interest area, which would make sense. It actually is trying to show you disturbing content that will keep you looking because it is disturbing. It's the old New York Post headline, it was a two-parent baby born with three heads or something, and whatever's disturbing them will get you to pick it up and look at it, and that's what they're doing, and they're just creating horrible problems. So I won't go near.
I won't engage.
I try to avoid.
Yeah, I use it pretty much to, as my friends know, hype my cat and my work.
I think you have to go in, and sometimes I just really try to minimize. I have a couple groups that meet on WhatsApp. Oh, yeah. Otherwise, I try to stay away. But you can still send me, people listening, you can still send me hate chats and hate emails, and I will read them.
Really?
And I will probably respond. Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I respond to almost everything. You can also go on Amazon and just hate my books.
Oh, God. Too much. Riki,
well, at least it would mean that someone besides a direct family member had bought them. So that would be really.
Oh, my God. Before we head out, tell me about your dogs.
We have Riley.
Riley.
Am I getting him or no?
Yeah. Oh, is he like a little Dobie?
He's your basic terrier mix, and we have Churro.
Oh, whom I met. Sweet.
And then we have Sobi Latte that we lost just last year. So,
Oh,
and Riley, unfortunately, is getting a little doggy dementia. So I'm not sure how much longer we're going to have him. He's a rescue, so
oh yeah. Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
wish we had a little more time with him.
I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're
Dogs
great.
don't care about your gender,
They do not.
although they do a gender check. They
Yes,
always are
they
sticking
do.
their nose in your crotch to check things out.
I was just
And I
thinking
can see
that.
Riley checking me out when he first got home, and he would check me out, and then he would look at me like, no, that's a boy. And then he would, I'm just
No,
kidding. He didn't do that.
they're terrible. All right, my friend. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. What an honor it is to spend this time with you. Thank you.
You too. And also, I'm just going to say this again, sweetie. If there's anybody else you can send me to be interviewed, I am like open for business now that I'm getting the hang of it. After losing my cherry with you, I would,
Yay,
I
me.
would, I know you're going to leave that. And I would, no, I'm serious. I was terrified. I've never done it. I've never interviewed anybody for a book.
Wow.
I've done anthology. Why would I've never done an interview book? I've done
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Genderqueer was an anthology, but that was asking for submissions. This
Yeah,
is
yeah.
terrifying. So, but yeah,
Well,
now
you're
I'm like,
very good at it. You're
I
natural.
maybe, I mean, we kind of, we had so many points of contact,
Yeah.
but I don't know if the next one was as strong, and I have my third one on Saturday, but I'm already up to 10 people, but I think I'm probably going to need a pool of about 20 to whittle down. And I would like to have, lots of, I mean, it's just really fascinating. It's just talking to trans people and really learning about them. And
Mm-hmm.
by the way, just, the second trans man, completely different from you in every regard, except every regard that counted.
Really?
Honey, I could go down a fucking checklist.
Wow.
Sexual abuse, body depersonalization,
Uh-huh.
alcoholism and abuse, PTSD symptoms. He did this whole thing checklist. It's like everything was exactly this,
Mm-hmm.
you
But
know,
totally different.
raised in a fundamentalist family where they just denied everything about his body.
Oh, God.
Still dealing with it. Sleep disturbances, insomnia,
Yeah.
just the whole thing.
Huge.
And I'm starting to realize that this is a type that many of us have that we're not talking about. We'll see. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I haven't interviewed any trans women, but I'm starting to think that maybe this is a psychological profile.
Oh, wow.
I don't know. I'll let you know.
Yes. Okay. On that note, enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. I hope this was helpful or
Yeah.
useful or
Oh,
at
this
least
is
interesting.
great. Yeah. This is great. Thank you. Good
Good.
material.
All
Take
right,
care.
kiddo. You too. Bye bye.
Bye.